The top stories on Sky News. Saudi Arabia has severed all ties with Iran after its embassy in Tehran was attacked on Saturday. It followed the execution in the kingdom of a prominent Shia cleric. A video has emerged which shows an apparently British jihadi from Islamic State making threats to the UK before 5 men accused of being British spies are killed. President Obama is expected to meet the US Attorney General today to discuss ways of reducing gun violence in the United States. It's reported he intends to take executive action on the issue. More now on the new Islamic State video. Sky's Enda Brady has the details.
The change of personnel, of course, being brought on because of the coalition airstrike which killed jihadi John Mohammed Emwazi from West London. So that vacuum has been filled, as we probably could have guessed it would have been, and they found another British jihadist to carry out their killings. So we can look at some of the stills that we've got from the video. There are 5 masked men in the video and 5 prisoners, all dressed in orange. The prisoners obviously are speaking under extraordinary duress. Some of the men say they're from the town of Raqqa, which is in northern Syria and has become the de facto capital of so-called Islamic State. And they apparently confess to the crime of spying for the UK government. That's what Islamic State accused the men of. They are all then killed. And at the end, the man with the British accent speaks to the camera. It's a diatribe against David Cameron and his government, and we can hear a portion of it now.
This is a message to David Cameron. Just like your predecessors, Blair and Brown, are just as arrogant and foolish. In fact, David, you are more of an imbecile. You will lose this war, as you lost in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Even more chilling, at the end of the video, a little boy appears. He too speaks with a British accent. The boy is no more than 4 or 5 years old, and he speaks at the end of the video, and then a graphic says that there are more videos to come. We've had some reaction from the Quilliam Foundation. John Russell, we heard from earlier on Sky News.
Its aims are likely to be to polarise communities here in the West. It's likely to increase the fear factor, so people are constantly afraid of terrorist attacks. And it's likely to grant Islamic State media coverage in the Western press. Those 3 things means Islamic State can be even more effective at what it's doing in terms of recruiting Western populations to join its foreign fighter force, to be its cannon fodder, and to strengthen its positions in Iraq and Syria.
It has not been a good few months for so-called Islamic State. Last week they lost the Iraqi town of Ramadi, back now in full control of the Iraqi army, so that was a significant setback. And of course in northern Syria, the Kurdish Peshmerga have been making significant inroads there as well. A lot of territory is now under their control, so Islamic State have suffered losses in the past 2 months. And if you were looking at this, you could say that this is their propaganda arm coming out with more of the same, and crucially, you know, with that British-voiced jihadist carrying out the killings in the video, knowing that this would get huge coverage around the world.
Let's return to our top story now. The growing tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran. National security analyst Arash Aramesh joins me from San Francisco. Good morning, Arash. Now, obviously Saudi Arabia must have known what the reaction was going to be. Do you think al-Nimr's execution speaks more to the fact that they're more concerned with sending a strong message to internal dissenters rather than an international backlash they'll have to deal with?
You know, it's a combination of both. On the one hand, ever since the new king, King Salman, took over early last year after the death of King Abdullah, King Salman has taken a much more hardline position in dealing with Iran. He appointed a very young defense minister with very sort of Iranian positions, and also a foreign minister, the first time ever that a foreign minister in Saudi Arabia is not part of the royal family. Mr. Jubair, he's a diplomat with very strong sort of views against Iranian hegemony and what the Islamic Republic of Iran is doing, not just in the Persian Gulf, but also in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and the broader Levant region. So executing Sheikh al-Nimr, who, while was a very famous and top Shiite cleric, and definitely more along the lines of the Iranian theological thinking. He was not exactly an Iranian tool. Why do I say that? Because one of the biggest issues, for instance, about the Syrian civil war, Sheikh Nimr came out and supported the Syrian opposition and the Syrian revolution and said the downtrodden, the ones who have been just unjustly wronged, can never support a regime like Assad. So it's a very delicate balance. But again, the Saudi government perhaps wanted to provoke Iran, and it did. And on a day after 47 executions, when all the headlines, all the world could have been solely focused on beheadings and killings in Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden the headlines switch, and now we're dealing about 2 embassy and consulate attacks in Tehran and Mashad, and 2 embassies set ablaze in Iran. So you'll see how it goes.
Let's talk about Syria and Yemen, what are in effect proxy wars between Saudi Arabia and Iran. What sort of a backlash do you think this execution of al-Nimr will have on the diplomatic efforts to end those conflicts?
Escalating tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, by far the 2 most powerful players in the Mideast region, and by far, the 2 powers in the region for whom other countries are involved in these proxy wars. If the war in Iraq between the Sunnis and the Shia, the war in Syria between President Bashar al-Assad and the opposition forces, many conflicts in Lebanon. To some extent, other regional conflicts, especially the one in Yemen, for instance, can be directly attributed to this ongoing rivalry and regional hegemony between Iran, a Persian, sort of a non-Arab, a Shiite, a non-Sunni power north of the Persian Gulf, and Saudi Arabia, the dominant Sunni Arab power south of the Persian Gulf. So I don't think escalating tensions between these 2 powers is good news for peace talks in Yemen or peace talks in Syria. On the very same day that Saudi Arabia executed Sheikh Nimr, they also announced that their peace, sort of their truce and their ceasefire with the Houthi rebels, backed by Iran, is over. And Saudi Arabia is going to engage in more direct military sort of engagement in Yemen. As you know, the Syrian peace talks are also ongoing, and the opposition is going to come to peace talks to talk to Assad's representatives. I don't think direct tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are now escalating, are going to help any of these peace efforts in the region.
Okay, Arash Aramesh, National Security Analyst, thank you very much.